A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers Chandigarh edition. Now, in the news, first of all, we have names of about 4+ bills that were introduced in the parliament. The bill concerning Delhi, National Capital Territory, has been approved by both the Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. Then we have Data Protection Bill, which was passed by the Lok Sabha. Then we have the bill on the National Research Foundation. So this bill has been introduced. So there are actually a number of bills which have been mentioned over here. Okay. We have an explainer on the Data Protection Bill. It is basically telling us about what all things are there in the data protection, which we have otherwise discussed. Moving on, we had National Handloom Day on 7th of August. Now I have shared a Telegram, on the Telegram I've shared this article over here on the National Handloom Day, and it tells us about the various handloom craft. So this seems to be important, like match the following type of questions. So this you can prepare. I want you to read on it. Next, we have Havana Syndrome and hardening of trade stance. So both of them are part of the explainer, which I'll be covering. Besides, something very similar to this article, hardening of trade stance, has been covered in the editorial and opinion section, titled as The Great Unraveling. So this we'll do. Now, unlike yesterday's newspaper, where we covered almost all the articles, here we just have this one. There is one on Article 372 actually, but they are highly politicized, not of great, for exam point of view, doesn't seem very important. Then Rahul Gandhi getting a membership back to the Lok Sabha. So those things are there. Okay. Then there is this news on WHO substandard drugs, in Iraq. So WHO has raised flag. Besides international news, not much. Economy news, not much. We just need a broad overview. Now coming to the first page, Centre gets control of Delhi via Lieutenant Governor as Parliament stamps its approval to the bill. Which bill? The NCT Bill. So these were the points concerning the NCT Bill. I'm sure there'll be a lot of other things. The main point of contentions were that Lieutenant Governor of the Union Territory has been made final authority. He is the final authority. Now this is explicitly mentioned in the law. Earlier there was disagreement between the elected representatives of the state, mainly the Chief Minister and the Lieutenant Governor. And traditionally we have the governor works in accordance with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. But Delhi is an exception. And here Lieutenant Governor is the final authority in case of disagreement. There is now normally the governor works on discretion, but here it has been used. The term is sole discretion. So the Lieutenant Governor may act in his sole discretion. Besides, it also tried to correct the issue of services. Both the elected representatives, that is the Chief Minister and Lieutenant Governor, had disagreement over the issues of appointment of civil servants. The CM wanted certain person, the Lieutenant Governor wanted certain other person. Now to rectify this, there is the emergence of creation of a new authority known as National Capital Region Civil Services Authority. So this will be responsible for appointments and transfers of civil servants concerning the NCT region. Now this will comprise of the Chief Minister and 2 senior bureaucrats, one principal Home Secretary and the other one is the Chief Secretary. So these are the main points. Now if you look at this bill that was introduced, this goes against the ethos of federalism. And federalism has been mentioned in the doctrine of basic structure of the Constitution. It's not really in the constitution, but it is derived by the court, the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court, in the famous Keshav Nanda Bharti case, created the concept of doctrine of basic structure, which said that the parliament can change anything, can enact anything, as long as it doesn't violate the doctrine of basic structure. And in the later judgments, for instance, the Minerva Mills case, series of things which may come under doctrine of basic structure was mentioned. And one of them is the concept of federalism. So opposition is raking up the issue of doctrine of basic structure. Maybe when it is challenged in the court, they will argue on the basis of doctrine of basic structure, that this bill NCT goes against the ethos of federalism, which is part of doctrine of basic structure. Now I want to reiterate this point. Doctrine of basic structure as such is nowhere written in the constitution. It is something that is innovated and developed by the Supreme Court. Next, very short. Supreme Court intervenes in Manipur. We have been hearing Supreme Court has been looking into the issue of Manipur and the failure of the government at center as well as the state government. So now it is forming a probe agency which will look into the issue of relief and rehabilitation of the victims. So for this, there will be 3 judges. Right? You should, depending on the exam, you should know the names of the judges also. Okay. So 3, this thing is there. Plus they want appointment of certain police officials, etc., to look into the probe, to assess the panel. Now in Nu, which is close to the Gurgaon, and where the violence had taken place, now we have concerns about the bulldozer politics, if you remember. So bulldozers are being used to demolish illegal structures. But this is happening after this violence has taken place. So the High Court, Punjab and Haryana High Court, has raised concern that structures of particular community may be getting attacked or maybe getting demolished, and this should be stalled. So any demolition which is not according to law shall be stalled, or stay is there. Rahul Gandhi returns to Lok Sabha, will be among speakers in the no trust motion. So there is this no trust motion, and it is coming from Article 75(3), which says that the Council of Ministers are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. This word is important, Lok Sabha, not Parliament. Next week after train killings, RPF constable booked for promoting enmity. He's booked for hate speech. Hate speech is coming under section 153A of the IPC. Right, so this one is important, 153A of the IPC. Otherwise, it is important. We'll discuss it some other time. Okay. This article that I'm skipping, it is there in later page also, page number 15. It's being discussed. So this is basically concerning a popular news site known as Newsclick. So there is a concern that this Newsclick is funded by China. There is no such evidence as such, but a recent, earlier enforcement directorate had said that they are getting money from Newsclick, China, and they are raising points which are pro-China. So the opposition, now another news daily, New York Times report has also raised concern regarding the conduct of Newsclick, that they are getting money from China. So the BJP and the government is trying to link Newsclick, China, and Congress. So this is an anti-India umbilical cord. So next, Chandigarh mayor flags off latest sewer cleaning machinery. So this is part of urban issues, and this is also, sewer cleaning machinery. So cleaning of sewers is normally done manually. Unfortunately, it is done by manually. People have to go inside the gutter and the sewerage in the unhygienic areas, and many a times it leads to death also. because there are toxic gases in it. So it has been long been recommended that rather than manual cleaning, it should be done by machinery. In fact, sewer cleaning now comes under the category of manual scavenging. Fine. So manual scavenging in itself is a very, very important social issue. Plus, the government is doing, it says that they are working on the issue of manual scavenging. So GS2 as well as GS1, this topic is important. Now, these are the machines that have been incorporated. So let's say you are answering a question on manual scavenging. So you can use some of the names, right? So that might help you differentiate your answer. Even if you don't, it's fine, but we have some names like desilting suction machine, sewer inspection cameras, power rodding machines. So one odd is fine. Okay. Now, manual scavenging, as I said, is a very, very important topic. If you want to read, which you should read. So I have compiled all this in my video on manual scavenging with my channel, IASPrimers. So YouTube, you can find it. So all the content is available over there with PIB and the latest of the facts. So just a second. Yes. Obviously, we have discussed the NCT bill, and it is being called as unconstitutional on the grounds particularly that it is violating the doctrine of basic structure. Now we have a fact concerning diversion of forest lands, and this is in context of the Forest Conservation Act. Okay, so we have a fact that in the last 15 years, 3 lakh hectares of forest land has been diverted. And the issue of protecting it from diversion is that of the Forest Conservation Act. So this fact, just this one over here, can be used for your answer writing. And of this, 34%, it's mentioned over here, 34% is for mining and road construction processes. Okay, so let's say you have a question on assessment of the Forest Conservation Act, which I doubt, but if you have, you can mention if there is a concern about this thing. If let's say there is a question on climate change, global warming, India's commitment, India's intended nationally determined contributions, INDC. So there again, you can use this fact. So very good. I mean, so this can be used. India has a commitment that 1/3 of its geographical area should be under forest. But here we hear mostly about diversion of land from forest to other purposes. So we really don't see an addition of land into forest. We see vice versa. I'll do this first and then this one. So registration of births and deaths amendment bill passed in Rajya Sabha. Birth certificate, death certificate. Okay. So it is saying that now with this bill being passed in the Rajya Sabha, this bill will allow that especially the birth document can be used, birth certificate can be used for as an alternative document, as a legitimate document for various purposes like admission into educational institutions, for issuance of driving license, voter list, etc. Next, Lok Sabha passes Personal Data Protection Bill. Now, personal data protection, we have talked enough. Will be discussing it, so we don't have to do the explainer. The points are mentioned. Now, just one thing. There was a concern raised by the opposition that Lok Sabha, the BJP party or the government, this is a public bill, so they are using the provision of money bill. They are denoting the public personal data protection as money bill. So in money bill, what happens is if the Lok Sabha passes, but obviously the speaker has to decide it is a money bill. So the Rajya Sabhas cannot really decline the bill. It doesn't require a majority in the Rajya Sabha. So yeah, so this is not classified as money bill. So now it has gone through the Lok Sabha. Now it has to go through the Rajya Sabha as well. So it is not a money bill. By the way, money bill are those bills which are having content, having provisions strictly concerning Article 110 of the Constitution. Any other bill, if it is having those provisions, then it will be deemed as a finance bill. And the process is same as an ordinary bill. Passing of that bill is same as ordinary bill. Only exemption is that president prior recommendation is required. Okay, so Lok Sabha passes Personal Data Protection Bill. Now, this Personal Data Protection Bill is mainly concerning the obligations of entities who are handling your data, known as data fiduciaries. These includes entities, companies like social media companies, Gmail, Facebook, etc., or an agency like UIDAI, which manages Aadhaar data. So they are holding your data, so they have an obligation to protect it, right? And use it correctly. And at the same time, as an individual who's giving the data, so they have their rights. So rights of individuals whose data is taken. So one is obligations of the data fiduciary. So obligations of handling and processing data, and other is rights of the individuals. And this was very much required. Now this data protection bill is based on Justice Shri Krishna Committee report. Now this bill consists of the following important provisions. It says that there shall be a data protection board. Data protection board, which will see that the provisions of the law are enforced. Secondly, it also deals with the issue of age of consent, that is age of consent with reference to children. So they want to lower this age. Presently it is 18 years, so lower this age considering that children form a sizable amount of population which needs access to internet. So it is said to be 15% of the internet users. So I'm just dealing with some of the important provisions. And then we are hearing about the issue of blacklist approach. So from a whitelist approach, the government has moved to blacklist approach. That is, if any company is seen to be engaging in wrongful conduct, if they have not met their obligations, then they will be blacklisted. The recommended approach was the whitelist approach, wherein the government audits that adequate safeguards will be followed. It gets an assurance and then it gives a license. So that is a whitelist approach. Now this is being criticized, but I think this is maybe more appropriate, especially given the startups and all those things, and we want to move away from regulatory restrictions that are there promoting ease of doing business. Okay. Then one of the important provisions are right to be forgotten. Let's say my data is there and something about my news or something is there, maybe in the past something about me, now I want that to be gone. So it should not be in the perpetual memory. So the idea of right to be forgotten, that thing may be erased, that data may be erased. Then one of the concerns with the data protection bill is lot of exemptions have been given to center with reference to collection and processing of the data in light of national security. National security, they can take data for investigation of crimes, etc. And for this, they do not need approval of the data protection board. Another concern is that the data protection board will be solely appointed, the members, by the center. So center has a lot of powers with reference to the data protection bill. Now we come to the explainer section. These two I'm doing, Havana Syndrome and the hardening of trade stance. This is the data protection bill. I think we should first cover this data protection bill, right? And then we will come to Havana Syndrome and other things. Now here we have a defense from the minister with reference to center getting a lot of powers. So he's saying that let's say there is an accident that has taken place, or let's say there is an offense that has taken place, center cannot seek, it doesn't have the time, there is a lot of urgency, and we cannot wait for getting approval from the data protection board. So we need all that data quickly. Then there is one more point with reference to censorship. So this is that let's say there is any content on a platform, that content may be removed. So this is already there via the section 69A of the IT Act. Okay. Now let's say somebody has a concern about a verdict given by Data Protection Board. In that case, they may appeal to the Telecom Disputes Settlements and Appellate Tribunal. Fine. So they have created the regulator, and regulators' decisions can be appealed against Telecom Dispute Settlements and Appellate Tribunal. It has also provided for the ease of cross-border data flows. Besides, with reference to significant data fiduciaries, means big companies which manage your data, there should be a provision of appointing a grievance redressal officer, right? So officer for data protection and grievance redressal. So that should be there. Besides, if wrongful conduct is seen, in that case, there will be fine, minimum fine 50 crores, maximum 250 crores. And the Data Protection Bill shall also dilute the RTI Act with reference to Section 8 of the RTI Act, which contains private data of a particular person. Okay. Now coming to the next one, Havana Syndrome. Havana, by the way, is in Cuba. Okay. What is this Havana Syndrome? So in late 2016, relations between US and Cuba is the east of this thing, the US, east of US. So Cuba was a communist country, so US is a democratic, their relations were not good, but the relations got normalized, and therefore US decided to have an embassy in Cuba. Now the officials over there, particularly the intelligence officials, they felt that they were hearing certain sounds. They were hearing certain sounds without any outside noise. So outside there is no noise, but internally they are hearing noise. So without any outside noise, nausea, vertigo. Vertigo means a sense of imbalance, chakkarana, and headaches and memory loss. Fine. So they had a concern that they are hearing certain noise. Likewise, there have been concerns in other areas, like in US diplomats in China and US diplomats in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. So they have experienced similar things. So some of them also said that they feel headaches, disorientation, insomnia. So they feel that they are being exposed by a microwave weapon. So they are being exposed to microwave radiation, because of which they are getting all these symptoms. Now, experts have debunked this theory, and they think that this is more of a psychological issue rather than a physiological issue. That is, physically you're not affected, it's all in your head, it's in your mind. Now, why are we talking about this? We're talking because a Bangalore resident has gone to the Karnataka High Court and asked them to issue mandamus writ of mandamus for inquiry on Havana Syndrome and the prevention of high-frequency microwave transmission in India. By the way, microwave frequency is used for mobile communication, right? So it is deemed to be the ideal one for radio communications. Okay, so this is it. By the way, you can always check mobile phones frequency, the frequency at which they work. Maybe it can be asked in the pre-exam. Okay. And mandamus script means, writ means we command. You must have studied it in the polity. Right? So it is a command which is issued by the court to inferior courts and inferior and other institutions, subordinate courts, corporation, public authority, etc. Okay, the hardening of trade stance. This is with electronics. Recently, we heard about licensing immediate requirement of licensing required if laptops are to be imported into the country. So very recently we heard this. So with immediate effect, licensing for import of laptops. The industry is concerned that they had already ordered for laptops from outside, especially China. So this will affect the imports as it is from the immediate effect. So this is, the government says that it is an effort to promote domestic manufacturing. It's a regime to promote domestic and manufacturing and to incentivize manufacturing within the country. That foreigners also come and manufacture in India. Now, there are two ways of looking at it. Is one is what overall trend over here. The other thing is that why the government came up with laptop licensing when they are working, so many schemes are there for promoting domestic manufacturing. So let me cover this one and then we'll go with the trend. So the main reason they say that the PLI scheme, production linked incentive scheme for electronics manufacturing, particularly laptops for IT hardware, has failed to find much attraction. That is the real reason. So therefore, they are looking at the last case resort, that is laptop licensing. Now moving on. So this is laptop licensing is one such case where the government is bringing in a trade barrier to promote domestic manufacturing. This has been going on from quite some time now, especially post 2016, where we see series of trade barriers like in the form of duty hikes for toys, solar panels, etc. Right? So those have been used to promote domestic manufacturing. So you can see the chart over there, like series of taxes, likewise for toys traders, retailers, wholesalers. So these have been done. Duty hike on solar panels, etc. for solar cell manufacturing within the country. So the need to do so, especially post 2016, the government says that it is wrong to declare this as protectionist. That is, we are protecting the domestic manufacturer. It is largely a global trend. Even US was doing it under President Trump. Europe was doing it. So a lot of countries were doing it. So this was part of the global trend. Now we cannot ignore this fact that there was an attempt to protect and as well as promote the domestic manufacturing. It is long-standing goal of the country that the share of manufacturing sector, as percentage of GDP, which is 14%, should increase to 25% of the GDP. We want more manufacturing taking place so that we can have more non-farm jobs. So that is a long-standing goal. And there are certain sectors that we can focus like electronics, toys, etc., where manufacturing may be done. They're coming from China. Why? We can do it in India also. Third point they are saying is that, which the government is saying, point number two, the government is not saying, it's we who are saying it. Third point is that they want to address the issue of duty inversion. Duty inversion. So it's mentioned somewhere over here. Duty inversion is a concept wherein if the import of finished goods, let's say mobile phone, is cheaper, finished goods are cheaper than, let's say, the components of the mobile phone were imported into India and assembled. So the finished, if it is imported completely 100%, if it is and not assembled in India, it will be cheaper because finished goods have lesser tax as compared to the tax on the parts. So this is known as duty inversion. The idea was that we do not become mere assemblers. We rather make the entire unit. We have a proper setup where not just we're making the phone, but also the components for making of the phone. So entire value chain of manufacturing, let's say of electronics, mobile phone, etc., is there within the country. So to incentivize commodity manufacturers, right, ancillary manufacturers to come within the country. So this is duty inversion. The government, BJP, was strongly against it, but they had brought in something known as phased manufacturing program, in which again they have resorted to duty inversion, wherein the parts are more expensive, the parts required to make something, than the complete phone or a complete finished product. So we have the reasons why the government is hiking the taxes and the custom duties. Now coming to the concerns. Now, foremost, the first concern that has been mentioned, it is by Dr. Arvind Panagriya, who was the head of the Niti Aayog, deputy chairman. So he's saying that with this policy, we are moving to trade diversion. So trade diversion means switching from a less costly source to a more costly source. So because of taxes, that would happen because of the custom duties. Then the idea was improving the share of manufacturing sector in the GDP. But we see that over a decade now, this policy has been in place, but the share of manufacturing sector still remains the same, 14%. So it has not gone up despite all the policies. Besides having policies of protectionism, it leads to isolation of a country's economy. In fact, at India's expense, other countries like Vietnam, Philippines are benefiting because they are being part of the regional comprehensive economic partnership. We decided to go against it to protect our economy, but these are part of it. So now a lot of businesses, enterprises are coming and investing here rather than coming to India because they have better to offer because of the RCEP regime. So RCEP, call it Asia Pacific grouping, is there. So we are getting disadvantaged, we are getting isolated because of it. So these are some of the concerns. Now, next one is substandard unsafe. WHO now flags alert for India-made syrup sold in Iraq. So yesterday we had an article, we had an editorial wherein we discussed the issues, the India-made cold remedies, low-cost medicines, but it is leading to ailments, deaths, ailments in kidney, etc., in various parts in Gambia. Now in Iraq also we are talking about. So this is a cause of concern. Now, here the government had asked the pharmaceutical companies to abide by the WHO recommended good manufacturing practices. Okay. Now moving on, let us look at the overall issue now. Some of the points which I am actually taking from the previous article. By the way, the countries affected, Gambia, Uzbekistan, Cameroon, have been listed here also. Okay. So traditionally, the government has gone with a piecemeal approach. That is, they are not looking at holistic reform, but case by case, they are looking at it. And many a times they deny any complicity, that we are not responsible, somebody else is responsible. Now, when we look at the companies which are supplying medicines, less than 20% of them are WHO certified. That means quality manufacturing processes, etc., may not be up to the mark. Then many of these manufacturing companies, they outsource the production or manufacturing to smaller companies, MSME, where the safeguards or the required protocol may not be followed, and because of which there may be contaminants or variance from the prescribed quality standards. Then, notwithstanding all of this, there are supposed to be regulatory bodies which keep an oversight and ensures that wrongful conduct is not done. But for that, the regulatory bodies are required to be staffed. They're required to be well funded to operate well. But state regulatory bodies are understaffed. Now here there is a mention of Haryana, because some of the medicines were from Manesar area. So it is only staffed at 40%, the regulatory body for Haryana. Now for this, obviously, we need to rectify this issue. We need the government to have a holistic viewpoint, right? So like that correction has to be done. But more importantly, we should have public data or some sort of a database wherein the flagged medicines or the drugs are listed, so that the patients, the parents who are giving the drugs, doctors, they are well informed and do not prescribe those medicines. Fine. So these were the main pointers which I've borrowed from yesterday's editorial. And now, trust of the House. This is not important. This is more of political. Moving on, the great unraveling now. This article. It took me a lot of time analyzing it. I have shared this on the Instagram also, and shared some additional articles which I used to read. So all on my Telegram channel. Okay. So let us cover this now. Now, please read this. Muscular industrial policy in advanced economies is the latest policy error since 2008 global financial crisis. Okay. Muscular industrial policy, this means the countries taking up policies, industrial policies to promote and promote as well as protect their industries. For example, nowadays we're talking about promoting manufacturing of semiconductor sector. So having a proper regime or tax concessions, etc. for the semiconductors. So across the world, we are seeing all this. So that is a example of muscular industrial policy. Okay. Now leave that. Now come to the next one. This article can be broken up into two parts. So first, it is telling us about the great financial crisis, the global financial crisis of 2008. And second is the period after this, that is the post-2018 period, where we see muscular industrial policy. So this article has 2 points. So global financial crisis happened because of the failures of the bank in the US, right? So that happened, it affected the entire world. Now, as a result of this, the world, including India, they came up with the policy of easy monetary policy. That is, the Federal Bank of US giving having very low interest rates, so that more money is supplied into the economy. So that was the idea, right? This was done in India also. So there was surplus liquidity in the economy as a result. So initially the idea was to ride over this crisis. It was very bad. So we wanted to ride over it. So easy money was provided so that the economic activities, credit activities continue, more investment happens. So that was the idea. Okay. So this was going on. And on the other hand, the government was following a contradictory policy, which is tight fiscal policy. This approach was aimed at ensuring macroeconomic stability. Imagine the banks have failed, it may affect the overall finances of the government, US government. Same for India also. So they were concerned about issues like inflation, fiscal deficit. So they were concerned about all that. So they were following the practice of austerity. So this is for almost all the countries. Now, combined effect of easy monetary policy and tight monetary policy had a nullified effect. Right? It had a nullified effect. Now, by the way, I'll tell you one more thing. This easy monetary policy of having low interest rates, it actually led to a lot of liquidity in the economy. And for years to come, it had an inflationary effect. 2013, 2014 also we had a lot of inflationary effect. That's one of the reasons why Congress was voted out from India, from the Lok Sabha. Okay, so a lot of liquidity was there. So to remove this, interest rates were hiked. right? So credit became more expensive. It affected the industry. So that vicious cycle was continuing. Okay, now coming to post 2018 era. Now, because of the tight fiscal policy, the government realized that they made a mistake since 2008 across the world. So the governments started to move towards a easy fiscal policy to promote industrial growth by means of subsidy as well as public spends. For example, in India, we're talking about higher spending on creation of public infrastructure over the years. Now, this naturally spurred up the demand and economic activity, but at the same time, it had an inflationary effect. On the other hand, the 2008 where easy monetary policy was being followed, the monetary policy post that was more inclined towards normalizing of the interest rate. Earlier it was close to zero. They were now increasing it. But at the same time, fiscal policy is going in the other direction. It is now an easy fiscal policy, which is aimed at giving subsidies, promoting public spend, etc. So that was going on. Now, besides this, we are in post 2018. We are seeing other things also. We are seeing a trend of deglobalization. We are blaming, like for example, in US, we are blaming China shock. That is, China has emerged as a manufacturer of the world, and it has led to loss of jobs. So, be it in US, be it in Europe, there is this politics, right-wing politics have emerged, and they are saying that our jobs have affected. We will bring back the jobs, right? So such demands are made. So this has happened because of they're blaming the China shock. So they are saying that because the world is open, so we are into the free trade regimes, our jobs have gone outside of the country. So be it China shock, be it jobs going from USA to Mexico, so that they are saying. So we are moving towards a trend of deglobalization. President Trump moved out of Trans-Pacific Partnership. The negotiation was going on, and he was moving towards bilateralism, that is US and independent bilateral agreements with different countries, which would be favorable to USA. Okay, so that regime we were moving into, and that was an overall trend. In fact, besides this, we also saw trade wars and rise of interest rates, rise of custom duties or hike of custom duties on imports. So trade war between US and Europe was seen. Trade war between US and China was seen. Okay. So one approach was that we need to stop the import of manufactured goods and promote the domestic industry, which is now referred to as the Muscular Industrial Policy. That is having a policy to promote the domestic manufacturing setup by means of incentivizing, that is subsidies, tax soaps, etc. Okay. Now this muscular industrial policy is problematic. There is let me discuss this. Muscular industrial policy, the author says, is problematic because the government is promoting something. It's giving subsidy or spending more money. So the government is picking that, okay, fine, this sector needs more money. This sector, we need more industry. So the government is choosing or allocating its resources to a particular sector. For the present, the focus is on semiconductor sector, be it US, be it India. Tomorrow, there will be something else. So when the government allocates their resources, it undermines allocation efficiency. And you're distorting the market also. It should be best left to the market forces. Maybe some indication must be given, but besides that, it should be limited to that. India, we have the PLI scheme for the semiconductors, so government is giving subsidy for that. Okay, so muscular industrial policy also leads to this thing, allocation efficiency coming down. Besides, As a part of deglobalization and muscular industrial policy, we see trade trends of reshoring and friendshoring. Reshoring means focusing on domestic manufacturing, so domestic sector. Friendshoring means having more of trade with your allies, rather than having free trade where anybody and everybody can trade with you. Trade with your friends. So that is friendshoring. There is another term known as nearshoring, here not mentioned over here, where we invest more in the neighborhood, nearby areas where we outsource the manufacturing activities. Now let me give you example of friendshoring. So recently, Chip for Alliance of USA is an example of friendshoring. So US, Japan, the 4 countries with which Taiwan, those are Chip for Alliance. So your friends there you are choosing. Likewise, China going in for the RCEP, where US is not there. So that is also example of friend shoring. Right. So basically an alliance where you are more keen to trade with your allies and remove other parties. And now as part of this thing, we are also seeing barriers to trade. So promoting barriers to trade for other people. So deglobalization, we are seeing muscular industrial policy, and with this we are seeing reshoring, friendshoring, and creating barriers to trade. Now this, the author feels, is intuitive, and it will not help the economy in the long run. So this is it. So what we need is an intelligent and coordinated global response to the emerging challenges. So previously it was China shock. China shock is when China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. It became part, it was, China could now trade with anybody. So China has taken over the manufacturing across the world. Now we have the new trend of ChatGPT, which is affecting the white-collar job. China shock affected blue-collar. Now ChatGPT will affect the white-collar jobs across the world. And more of this AI will come. So we need a creative solution. We need institutions that can do creative destruction. And new regimes can be created to address this issue, address these crises. Article 370. Earlier, we had an article from Ram Madhav, one of the functionaries of the BJP. So this article is a critique of the same. So he was saying that things have become normal post Article 370. And Mr. Mishra is also targeted over here. So here his article is there. So all political, purely political. Okay. So she is saying that if you say things are normal, so is giving examples of violence against pandits and migrant workers, unemployment going high, denial of permission to protest, and higher than usual casualties of the CRPF troops. Copy-paste conservation. Moving cheetahs artificially will hurt battle against habitat fragmentation. Okay, so very briefly, so this idea was to bring cheetahs from Namibia and South Africa, and they were to be relocated to Kuno National Park. Why Kuno? Why not any other national park? Because it was expected that Kuno has a high cheetal density, which is the primary prey for cheetahs. But it has come to light that it was an overestimation. So now you have brought in cheetahs, they have to acclimatize, plus adequate prey base is not there, which is leading to their deaths. Now they are considering to relocate them artificially to west and national parks and towards the west and north. Madhya Pradesh is somewhere in the center. Okay. Now, but in these areas, leopards dominate the landscape, and bringing in cheetahs may not be such a wise approach. And doing them artificially is again not good, because cheetahs should be able to move freely across the country. So telling them that cheetahs are here now, leopards will not be there. So this is not the right approach. It is leading to habitat fragmentation. Now coming to the international section, the world page. Elections to take place in Iraq, nominations in Iran for elections. Okay. Imran's party moves High Court to shift him to Idella prison. We're not interested. We should just have an idea what is happening. That's all. Bangladesh to tone down law criticized for crushing dissent. Okay. Indian students in UK are affected because their teachers are not examining their marks. So final year students in particular are affected because some trade union kind of protest is going on over the issue of pay and working conditions. Now coming to the economy section, auto sales see 10% growth in July. So says the Association for Automobile Sector. So Federation of Automobile Dealers Association. Right, so 10% sale has taken place. Okay, retail sales. Domestic companies raised 9.8 lakh crore from markets. Inflation is very high. It pinches vegetable thali prices up by 34% according to CRISIL. So this is all we have from today's news.